see them coming through.
And we are live, and I admitted everyone in the waiting room.
Wonderful. Alrighty. So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for attending and showing up tonight. We really appreciate you taking the time to come here and go over these rules with us. My name is Jen Eras, and I'd like to introduce Liz really quickly. She's our Spanish interpreter.
Thank you so much. Hola, ¿qué tal? Muy buenas tardes a todos. Les recordamos que el canal de interpretación estará en pocos minutos abriéndose. Por favor, una vez que vean el icono para interpretación, vayan a el pequeño círculo que aparece en la parte de hasta abajo de sus pantallas. Si no lo ven, hay 3 puntitos en los cuales pueden darle clic o tocar esos 3 puntitos y aparecerá una vez más el icono de interpretación. Una vez que lo vean, por favor, seleccionen al idioma español para que puedan escuchar esta reunión. Gracias. Thank you, Jan.
Okay, thank you so much, Liz. So she's got the Spanish interpretation line going. There should either be an icon at the bottom, or there's 3 buttons that you can select and then select Spanish interpretation. And you should be able to ask questions as well. And then we'll be able to answer through that interpretation line. Let's see. So just going over the agenda really quickly. First, I've introduced myself. I'm Jen Eras. I work for the Child Care Assistance Program Office. And I'd like to also introduce my colleagues. So we'll start with Dorothy Spence.
Good evening, everyone. Dorothy Spence, I'm the Child Care Assistance Program Manager. And I guess I will pass it to Tara.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tara Valentin, and I'm one of the Child Care Policy Analysts on the team.
And then we've got Chris.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Chris O'Grady, pronouns she, her. I'm the Legal Affairs Manager at the Department of Early Learning and Care.
All right. So just going through the agenda today, we're going to review some of the expectations or group norms that we have. We'll also review the purpose and scope of this Rules Advisory Committee. We'll go through some of the draft language, and then we'll have some time as well to answer questions or discuss each of the changes or any comments or questions you may have. We don't have any questions just yet, and we've got Tara will be, I believe she'll be keeping an eye on the chat as well if anything comes through that way. So group norms, really today we're looking at being equity driven with our perspective and approach. We're centered around children, families, and then also early learning professionals. We'd like everyone to remain courteous and welcome other points of views, because we did try very hard to assemble a different group of folks here, so we have a lot of different perspectives in the room. We strive to seek first to understand and then seek to be understood. We'll all stay present and focused on the materials that we have. Please be impeccable with your and respectful with your words, and just be aware of this is a really great space to be in, to be heard and to help to mold the policies that go on with this program. And then also we will stick pretty close to our start and stop times, just to respect your time that you've got in your schedules as well. So we have 4 different Oregon administrative rules that we'll be reviewing today. The first is regarding direct provider payments. That's the title of the rule. The second is on eligibility group structure. So that's for the employment-related daycare, the actual family portion of it. Our definitions rule, as well as the rule covers general financial eligibility. Diving right in, this one. So this Oregon administrative rule, it outlines the requirements that a provider must meet to be able to be paid, and also our provider payment processes and when provider payments can't be made. So those are the big bullet points on that. The reason for the change is essentially that the change that we're making would put into OAR the fact that into rule the fact that we can't issue a billing form for childcare that has occurred more than 12 months in the past. So this was something that was actually limited by our system. It was a system limitation that we, and it was an intentional limitation due to budget. So obviously, if we're paying for care that's too far in the past, it can start to throw off our budget when we move from one budget period to the next. And then with the launch of our new eligibility system, it actually did not include this restriction. We don't get requests for issuing billing forms this far back very often, and so it took quite a while before we discovered that it was that restriction wasn't built in. So essentially, what this rule change does is it puts that restriction into Oregon administrative rule that we can only issue billing forms if it's within a 12-month period from being issued. Like I really mean it when I say that it doesn't happen that often. We got one request in about a 3.5 year period from a provider that was requesting a billing form that was that far. So, and that's a lot of information, so I'll let you guys look through the PowerPoint and the information. We can also take comments at the end, but just wanted to address if anyone have any questions. We can always come back to this. I know there's a lot of information here, so I want to be also allow people enough time. I don't see anything in the chat, but you're welcome to use the chat as well if you have any questions or comments.
So currently this is like, it's a 3 months, right? And you're changing it to 12, is that correct?
Oh, that is a great clarification. So currently billing forms are, they're basically eligible for, or they're able to be submitted for payment for 3 months before they expire. The situation that this has come up with in the past has been typically like much larger providers, and they're going back through old financial records when they realize that they had missed a payment from a family that was 12 months in the past. There had been much more restrictive that we have in the past with the issuing billing forms, where we only issue if there was hey girls, I need you to take her over that way. Sorry, you gotta go. What was it? Sorry. But typically we would only reissue if there was some major issue that happened. You know, like there was a fire and the billing forms were destroyed, or it was something really disastrous. But in probably the last 5 or 6 years, it's really been to the point where, you know, if the care was provided, we really do need to cover it. So we've issued billing forms back further. But what we're noticing is this is typically a request when someone is reviewing older financial records and they realize that they missed a month. So
Yeah,
again,
I would think that tax day to tax day, that's 12 months, right? After that, pretty much out of luck.
we really hope it's a generous enough period. Yeah. I think most providers do realize within a much shorter time frame, and if it's any time within those 12 months, even with an expired billing, the direct pay unit can reissue those to get the payment sent out.
I think that's great.
Hey, Jen, I just wanted to mention that your audio is, I can hear you, but sometimes it's not super duper clear. So just wanted to mention that. I don't know if others are having that same experience.
Okay, I'm switching over to computer audio. Maybe that'll be a little better. Is that better?
It's fantastic. Yes.
My new
Much
headset. I
better,
told you,
yeah.
Dorothy, I wasn't sure about that. Sorry about that. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, so and like I said, we can always go back to these if anyone comes up with questions, but we'll just move through some of the other rules. The eligibility group structure. So this rule is really talking about how we determine who's included in the group for an employment-related daycare case. And we call them eligibility determination groups, but it starts out kind of at the bigger one of household group, and then it goes down to these other ones that are like filing group, which is everyone who has to be on the application, and financial group, which is everyone whose income counts, and then down to like the need group and the benefit group, which is essentially like the kids receiving the childcare benefits. So in this rule change, the reason that we're changing this rule is actually just to add a little bit of clarity. So it's not changing who's included or how they're included, but more just language to offer a little bit more clarity. And we did this because we're aligning with some changes that are being made to Oregon Department of Human Services rules for other self-sufficiency programs. So we used to be included in that same rule set when we were part of ODHS. And so now we're just trying to maintain alignment between the two rule sets. We really don't want those to, we want them to mirror each other as closely as possible, because that does make it a lot easier for families to access not only our program benefits, but other program benefits they can get through ODHS. So this, like I said, this is really just clarifying language, and there shouldn't be any financial impacts to anyone. But ODHS they recognized the slightly unclear language, and they brought it to a meeting where we discussed and decided to keep in alignment. I'll give a moment here for people to look through this. Move over to our next rule,
Jen.
and this is a definitions rule. Really fun rule with definitions on all sorts of different terms that we use within the agency. And again, this one is really looking at alignment with other programs, but in this definition, we're defining illegal activity. It currently includes people who are working in the marijuana industry, and we're including the piece about people who are working in the psilocybin industry. I really want to flag this as a caveat that for the ERDC program, we don't regulate where a parent or a caretaker has to work. So when I say this is in alignment with other programs, more specifically the TANF and SNAP program, they do have work requirements that have to be tied to what is federally legal. And so this doesn't impact any of our families whatsoever, but it does keep those definitions in alignment with the other self-sufficiency programs. And Dorothy, you had a question or comment?
Just after we go through this section, and if there are any questions from the group here, I did want to go back to our first rule change because we did get another question, or we did get a question from YouTube. So just wanted to put that placeholder and then we can go back after you get through the rest of this.
Okay. Okay, so yeah, I don't know that there's much else to say. There's no fiscal impact to anyone, and it's not going to change how. I know this says here it's not going to change access for families, but it's also not going to change access for providers either. And then our next rule is the general financial eligibility. And this is essentially just pointing back to that rule that, that we just looked at. So in the previous rule structure, it had the definition written out again. And since we were changing it, it was just cleaner to point back to our definitions rule and say illegal activity as defined in the previous rule that I just mentioned. So again, this is just cleanup. We don't like to have terms defined in more than one rule, because then anytime you change it, you have to change it everywhere, and it's more prone to error. So this just points back to that definitions rule. So we should never have to change this one again, even if we change that definition in the future.
And there's a comment in the chat from Jessica Porter. So the psilocybin addition is not changing eligibility for ERDC, but does for other programs.
I actually can't answer to other programs. I know that both TANF and SNAP have work requirements that are associated with them for certain populations. I believe that the SNAP work requirement is really for it's a population called able-bodied adults without dependents. So they tend to not be our families that we serve because all of our families have some sort of dependence that, so there's not much crossover. But I know within those programs, in order for someone to get credit for working when they're required to work a certain number of hours, it has to be in a federally legal industry. So even if it's legal in Oregon, that doesn't make those hours count for that program. So that's how they shared it in our meeting with them when we were discussing these changes. But for really specific questions about how it would impact SNAP or TANF, we would really have to go to those other program groups to ask those. And Keisha, you had your hand raised.
Thank you so much. I hope everyone can hear me. Thank you for your time. I have a question. So when it is listing marijuana, including any form of CBD, any form of derivative from the marijuana plant, or any type of function off of it? So if people are looking at companies and they happen to have something there, that would exclude them if there was like a CBD format being sold.
This rule is really talking about that definition of illegal activity. And like I said, we don't really have illegal activity listed anywhere in the parent or caretaker requirements. But it says that just because something like illegal activity could be something that is legal in Oregon, but illegal federally, and then it just gives examples. So that's what these examples are. It had previously just given the example of, for instance, the marijuana industry, but now it's saying marijuana or psilocybin industry. It doesn't go into detail on derivatives or anything along those lines. That's a really great question, though. I've had to do a lot of research on like how far that can go, because I mean, you can even get into some hemp products too that, anyway, there's a lot there. But yeah, these are just giving really high level examples.
And Jen, just to clarify, so both the last rule and this rule, adding these definitions to what illegal activity is not participating in the marijuana industry or psilocybin industry. We're not taking that into account when anyone is applying for benefits for ERDC. So just wanting to make that super clear, like that is not, it's not going to impact someone's ability to access ERDC. It is adding, we're just defining what illegal activity means to align with the other self-sufficiency programs that also use this definition for their purposes. Is that a summary?
Yeah, I think that's the biggest piece we want to get across is this is not going to impact any families. If someone comes through the door and they're working in the marijuana or psilocybin industry and at any level, so whether it's CBD or actual marijuana production, if it's they're getting income from employment, it would be treated as income from employment, and then we would look at them for what kind of childcare hours they would qualify for. I think, oh, there we go. Sorry, I feel like I missed one. Maybe I did. Oh, no, we got all of them. Okay, sorry. I thought we had one more that I was missing. So just going through kind of the next steps and the timelines of what we have. So today was our Rules Advisory Committee meeting. There will be a public hearing on May 20th. So that's that'll be, I believe that's in the evening. And it's also a time for people to share any concerns, insights, or questions that they may have. And then we have a public comment period that will end on May 31st. We'll be sharing these rules with the Early Learning Council so that they can start reviewing them on May 22nd. And then they'll be voting on them for June 26th. And I believe, Chris, I believe our effective date is, I want to say it's July 1st, but
It's July 1st of 2024.
Yeah. And so some of the definitions, I believe ODHS has already moved forward with them. So their rule set was already updated. We didn't quite align the exact implementation of those alignments. But the important thing is that we will maintain that for clarity.
We did have one additional question that came in via the YouTube and that viewing requirement. And so Dorothy just put that in the chat, and this has to do with the first rule that you went over. Why are the billing for expiring, but I would say, why are the billing forms expiring in 3 months if we have up to 12 months to turn them in, having them expire and then having to reissue them as wasting paper?
Well, and with that, that's a really good question. Like I had explained earlier, previously, there were very few circumstances where we would even consider reissuing a billing form after it expired. But just in reviewing our policies and realizing that it was really a discussion at the upper policy level where essentially the management decided if the care was provided, we really need to do our best to pay for it. And so there was a shift in when we would reissue billing forms. So we couldn't really make a system change. Like making a system change was much more costly and would have taken a lot more time to make billing forms expire at a late, like expire after a year. And so we don't get I wish I had the numbers, but we don't get a whole lot of requests to reissue billing forms. For the most part, providers do, they do tend to either turn them in within that 90-day time frame, or they're asking for them to be reissued because they lost them. So they need to have a new form anyway.
I have a question on the public hearing for ERDC rules on May 20th. Is that just these rules or is that any of the ERDC rules?
So this will just be for these rules. And what makes a public hearing a little bit different than this is that public hearings are open just for public comment. So we will do an introduction of these rule sets and an overview of what the changes are. That's a little bit of a truncated version of what Jen went over tonight. And then we're not able to engage in discussion. We just accept public comment at that public hearing. But if you do have additional insight on other ERDC rules that you'd like to share with us as an agency, you are more than welcome to send them over and communicate with our team. It won't be part of the formal rulemaking process, but we love to hear public engagement and thoughts on our rules.
Thank you.
I apologize. I think I missed something because I don't see the actual rule language anywhere. I'm like looking on emails and invites and everything, and I'm not actually seeing the actual rule language. I tried searching the bulletin just now, but I couldn't find it in the March or April bulletins. So can somebody point me in the direction? Because I mean, it is a rule advisory committee and I'd really like to see the actual proposed rules language so that I can actually comment on the proposed rule language. So I apologize if I'm a little behind the 8 ball and everybody else has reviewed it. I have not reviewed it. Where can I go to review it?
That's okay. It is in the May 1st bulletin. And it was sent out, but Jen, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I have the notice of proposed rulemaking up.
Fabulous, thank you.
Yeah, of course. All right. Can folks see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. So this is the notice of proposed rulemaking. This is what goes out by the Secretary of State on the 1st of the month and what is the legal notice. And this gives information on the public hearing. And if you need accommodation, it also goes over the need for the rules and the rule numbers that will be changed, as well as a small overview of the change that's being made to those rules.
I'm sorry, can you put that link in the chat for me, please?
Yep, and we can follow up via email with the notice of proposed rulemaking as well. Sorry, I can't do both while I'm sharing my screen, but we will share.
Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And so the first rule that you will see in the notice of proposed rulemaking is actually the definitions rule. It wasn't necessarily put in this order just because the content here is a little bit smaller of what's being changed, but it comes in the rule set before the other rules. So this is the first rule change that you will see. And so here is a rule change that's being made. This is just cleanup pointing to a different statutory, the actual statute that was passed. So you'll see that change. That's a minor change, so we don't have to go through the rulemaking process, but we tend to clean up our rules whenever we go through a major rulemaking change. And then you'll see here where the change that Jen went over for psilocybin is right here under legal activity. So you can see that it's just these 2 words that are added to the definition section in section 24, legal activity. Are folks okay with me to go on to the next rule? Okay, I'm just going to scroll. You'll see that all of this is not changed. Nothing was changed. there. And then you'll see the next rule where there's changes is in the eligibility group structure 414-175-0015. No changes here. This is just some grammatical cleanup and the change for that filing group. And you'll see here the general financial eligibility 414-175-0030. Here's a change that we made when we were talking to our DOJ. They just wanted to have us reference a section instead of a rule. So this is, again, a minor change. Doesn't have any impact on the application of the rule. And then here's where you can see where there's a change in reference to income received from an illegal activity in section 7. So the crossed out language is things that we are deleting from the rule. And we're simplifying this section of the rule and just pointing to the definitions that we modified for illegal activity and adding psilocybin. And that it's considered countable income. Any questions on this change in its actual rule language? Keep scrolling, no additional changes in that rule text. The next one is 414-175-0085, direct provider payments. Again, these are just rule changes because we've had updates in our CCLD licensing, so childcare licensing division rule sets in the last year, and these were just minor corrections that we didn't catch for rule references. So this is just cleanup and referencing those rule divisions and why there are changes there. And then this last portion, section 6, is the portion around the billing forms. That childcare billing forms cannot be issued or reissued more than 12 months from the month that care was provided.
Thank you. That is very helpful.
You're welcome. And thank you.
I did put in the chat, the link to the notice of proposed rulemaking on the Secretary of State's website, in case that is helpful for folks to just access as well.
No, that was a lot of information that we went over pretty quickly. Is there anything else that folks wanted to check in on or discuss? Just as a reminder, the public comment period is open until May 31st. So if you think of things that you'd like to bring up or submit to the division, you can submit written public comment to me at chris.o'grady@delk.oregon.gov. I put my email in the chat. If you happen to send written comment to someone else on the state team, they will get it to me. So we will get that information for your comments. And again, that public hearing information, that's a chance if you don't want to give written comment that you can actually give verbal comment on this rule set. And we will follow up again with the rulemaking material, so it's easy to reference all in one email with the slides and the notice of proposed rulemaking. Right, if we have no additional comments, I think we will call it a night. Are we? All right. Thank you so much for joining us, everyone. Have a great evening.